Good evening, everyone. Good afternoon. On behalf of Teach the Shoah, we would like to welcome you for a very special afternoon of a family talk around a kitchen table. I'd like to start by introducing Jessica Silverman, Aidan Silverman and Lexi Silverman, and myself, Lynne Feldman. Today, we will be sharing the stories of Minia and Muni Osher, Luba and Schulim Kaminer, and Regina. We will be sharing the stories in first person. Jessica will be telling the story of her grandmother, Minia. I will be telling the story of Minia's cousin, Luba. And Aidan and Lexi will be themselves, and they will help us through this program. Lexi, Aidan, thank you. Jessica, would you like to say a few words, please?
Yes. Hi, everyone, and welcome. Thank you all for taking time out of your busy schedules to join us today for this very special program. We have people from all over the world on this Zoom. Thank you to our friends near and far. This afternoon, we'll be sharing just a portion of Minya, Luba, Regina, Muni, and Shulam's Holocaust stories with you. I wish we had the time to tell them all, but even these few will give you a sense of the resilience, courage, and humanity that carried them through.
Thank you so much. A very quick disclaimer. I'm in Israel just now, and I suppose you all know that there is a war going on. So in any case that we have a siren here, I will leave, but the program will continue, and Jessica will take over until it is safe for me to return. All right, so without further ado, please take your cup of tea, slice of babka, sit back and relax.
Luba, Grandma, I found this old box with a bunch of pictures and papers in it. Do you know what these are?
Ah, Lexala, Aiden, all the Kindla around there, all your friends, come gather close. Let me tell you what these pictures are. Oh my goodness. The picture in the left is a picture of me in my wedding dress. And next to me is Grandpa Muni. And below that, that's Cousin Luba from right there. That's Cousin Luba in the same wedding dress. She actually found that wedding dress for me. And then I wore it and I passed it down to her. And then she passed it on to others as well. Right behind Luba is her sister Regina. So yes, Luba and Regina, the cousins that I survived the war with. The picture next to that in the middle is a picture of me with Grandpa Muni, with the American general that threw us the wedding in the DP camp. And to the right, that's Luba right there with her husband Shulam, who was actually Muni's friend from Celts, and his brother Leo. They survived the war together. And then the document on the bottom, that's our ketubah, our wedding certificate. Oh my goodness, the times after the war. But before we talk about the times after the war, let me take you back to what life was like before the war. Life in Lodz was beautiful. I lived with my parents, Jacob and Perla, and my two brothers, Kalman and Itzik, and my three sisters, Esther, Chava, and Luba. Another Luba, not this cousin Luba, but my sister Luba. We lived in an apartment behind a dairy store that we owned and operated. I would work in the store after school. And you know, I always did love dairy, then and now. And I loved going to school. I was a good student, and I wanted to be a pharmacist when I grew up and to help people and to wear the white jacket. I came from a religious family, as you know, one of 6 kids. My parents named me Mendel, and they gave me the nickname of Mendela and Minya, which means strength. We celebrated all the holidays. Family like Luba and her sister Regina would come to Lodz and stay with us. And in the summers, we would go to Osikoff, where they lived, and we would vacation and visit with them and our grandparents who lived in Osikoff. In the winters, we would go ice skating. It was beautiful.
Life was lovely before the war. You know, I remember when you used to come with your sisters and your two brothers, and we used to visit with the grandparents. Minia, do you remember their pickles?
Yes,
Oh, the best.
they would make pickles for us to bring back and they would jar them, as well as some like kind of sauerkraut slaw. I do remember. They were always thinking of us.
They really were. And you know, we grew up in Osakov. My father, he was a big Zionist. He even wanted to go and live in Israel. My mother, not so much. So we stayed in Osakov. And at the beginning, I went to Beit Yaakov school, but then I went to a regular Polish school, the biggest one in the city. And you know, my brothers, they went to school and then to high school and even started their technical certificates in Lodz. And they used to take the train every day. It's only an hour away.
Right.
Life was just really fantastic until it wasn't.
Yes, because by September 1939, the Nazis had invaded Poland, and it seemed that just overnight, there were Nazi flags hanging in Lodz. Our neighbors, Poles, who were once our friends, turned on us. They were no longer our friends, and life in Lodz had changed. There wasn't enough food to go around. There were food rations. There were lines for bread. I had to wear a Jewish star on my jacket, but I was brave. I took off that star and I stood in line for bread overnight in the cold. In the morning, I'm still standing in line, waiting to get some bread, when a Pole recognized me and he told the SS that I was a Jew. The SS came over to me, slapped me across the face, threw me out of line, and I had to go home without any bread. There wasn't enough food to go around, so we had to close the dairy store and just eat whatever little bit we had left. You know, my mom said, now, since this is a time of war, we don't have to keep kosher. We can eat anything we need to. After the war, we'll go back to keeping kosher.
You
And
know, at the beginning of the war, it wasn't that bad when only the Germans came in. It's when the Nazis came in that things became really dangerous.
right,
My father and oldest brother, they thought it would be better for them if they went to Warsaw, the bigger city. But it was worse because for us in Osakov and in Lodz, they never bombed us. In Warsaw, there were bombs. So they stayed there only for a week. And in that time, the Nazis took over our flat. So myself, my sister Regina, and my younger brother, we moved in with a Polish neighbor. Not a Jewish one, of course, but it was terrible. And then my father and older brother, they came back after a week. It cost us a fortune to get them back, a fortune. But, you know, we made do with what we had.
we all needed to. We all needed to. So, yes. So, I mean, I remember us having to take the wood that was in our apartment and in the store and break it down and use it in the furnace so that we could stay warm. There wasn't enough coal to go around.
No, it was terrible. But then things got even worse. You know, when my father came back, he went into hiding because there was a rumor going around that he said that he was going to kill all the Germans. Could you imagine? So he went into hiding and he wasn't in hiding for very long. And at some point they found him. They threw him into jail. First in Osakov, but then they sent him away and we never heard from him again. And then they started a ghetto in Osakov. My mother, myself, and Regina, and a younger brother, we stayed with this neighbor, so we didn't go into the ghetto. But it was horrible, horrible.
Horrible. You know, I remember we all needed to do whatever we needed to survive. all throughout the war. So I was forced to go work in a straw shoe factory. My job was to take straw. It was really, really thick. And we would braid it and weave it together and make these boot coverings that would go over the SS soldiers' boots. At the end of the day, I was given a cup of soup. Sometimes that was the only food I had all day, and it was this horrible watery cabbage soup. But the foreman knew me, and even if my boots weren't 100% straight, I didn't get in trouble. But other people, if their boot coverings weren't perfect, they had to redo them.
You know, in Osakov, they started sending people also to forced labor. Both my brothers were sent away. My oldest brother, he was sent to the Baltic Sea. The younger brother, he went to Upper Silesia. And you know, it must have been, sorry, it must have been 1941. We got a letter. My mother got a letter from a Nazi doctor telling her that my brother died. He drowned because he went swimming in the Baltic Sea. Who could imagine in 1941 a Nazi doctor to write to a Jewish mother to tell her that her son passed away drowning?
No, it's unbelievable. I wouldn't believe it.
Nobody would. But you know, then things got even worse because it wasn't enough sending people to the forced labor. They decided there will no longer be Jews in Osakov. In the ghetto, outside the ghetto, it didn't matter. Everybody had to gather in the school courtyard, the same school I went to. We all gathered in that courtyard and we were split into two lines, A, B, A, B. Nobody knew what was a good line and what was a bad line and what the lines were even for. And you know, they wrote on our skin the A and the B. Somehow my letter got rubbed off. It was erased. I don't know how. And they put me in another line. And my mother and Regina were in another line. You know, my mother had a friend, her son, not Jewish, joined the SS. The only good thing about that was that he spotted me in the other line, came up, schlepped me out, pulled me out of the line, screaming and shouting at me, why am I going to another line? Who am I to decide which line I'm to go in? Shoved me back into the line with my mother and Regina.
He saved your life.
That was the only good thing he ever did. And you know, in the other line, our grandparents were there. My mother's sister was there. You know, my mother's sister, she had three children, two girls and a boy. My mother took them because they were put in our line. And then at the end, our line went to the Lodge Ghetto. The others, they just went onto a train. We don't know where they went. We never heard or saw them again. And then we arrived in the Lodge Ghetto, and probably my mother, I don't know who, found us a room in an apartment. And our room was on the side of the apartment in this big block of buildings. And then I took a job also at the straw factory with
Yes,
you.
yes.
But you know, I preferred the thick straw because sometimes when you started weaving it, grains of corn would fall out from the straw and I would collect them all, take them home, and then in the evening, my mother would make corn soup. Regina, my sister, she was very smart. She didn't want to come and work with us in the straw factory. She went to work in another factory that fixed phones, telephones that came from the front line.
Yes,
So clever, so
yes.
clever. But you know, nobody really had the same job all the time. Like you, Minia. You also had different jobs.
I hated this job. You know, they forced a group of us, the SS, to go to the cemetery where they shot the men and then we women had to bury them. I hated that job. I still remember it to this day. I had to do it quite often. The only thing is, afterwards, I would sit on my mom's grave because in the Lodge Ghetto, my mom Perla and my older brother Kalman both died. Life in Lodge was horrendous. People were dying from starvation and disease. And I would sit on their grave. I miss them so much
Till today.
till today. You know, as bad as that was, I'll never forget the Sperre.
The Sperre, the Great Deportation, the worst. Kinder, you can't understand what we lived through.
It's important that we share these stories so that you know, even as difficult as they are to hear. The Sperre, the Great Deportation. Let me tell you what they did. They took a group of rabbis out from a synagogue. There was a synagogue right by my house, so I saw this. And they lined up the men, the Orthodox men with the beards, and they're holding a Sefer Torah, a sacred Torah scroll. And they took a match and they burned them alive. Why? What did these men do?
Nothing. They were Jews.
Nothing. A woman was holding her baby. They wanted to take her baby away. She, of course, didn't want to let her baby go. She started running. They shot her in the legs and they took her baby. And yet, it wasn't enough. They threw babies
From the window.
of apartment windows, third floor, fourth floor, fifth floor, didn't matter, down to a truck below, like trash.
You know, years later, when I had my little Ricky, when Rick was born, I used to wake up from nightmares that he could have been one of those babies. You know, till today, I have these nightmares.
Of
They
seeing
never leave you.
these horrible things that went on.
You know, these Nazis, they would come, stand in the courtyard of these apartment blocks and shout for everybody to come
Yeah,
downstairs.
but we didn't go down. We
No,
knew,
no.
my mom knew not to, even though they were going around, they knew where everyone lived because they had the ledger and we had to all register ourselves. We didn't go down. One time, my mom hid us behind a credenza when they were doing a deportation. Another time, she made the bed with us in the bed. But then we learned that the SS were taking knives and stabbing them in the beds. So we couldn't hide there anymore. But we didn't go down when they called us out.
No. You know, my mother, she used to be so worried. When Regina and I went to work, she would be nervous till we came back home because she was always scared they would come and take us from the factories. They never took from the factories, and also after the Sperre, things were different. But you know, a mother never stops worrying.
Never.
It's what it is.
Yes.
But life in Lodge was really the hunger. Do you remember the food stamps, Minya? The
Yes,
ration?
absolutely.
You would have to stand in line every time for something else, sometimes for a loaf of bread, sometimes for sugar, sometimes for whatever, always the lines. You had to wait in line. You know, one day I went really early in the morning with the ration book and I was standing in line. And Regina sees me when she's going off to work. And then she saw me when she was coming back from work. I maybe moved 2 inches in the line. She was so annoyed, so angry. She came, she took me by the hand, marched me into the shop. We got our rations and we went back home. She was good that way, Regina.
Absolutely.
But you know, it was difficult. People say today, and this is very annoying. People say today there was a theater in Lodge Ghetto, you know, there was culture life, and maybe there was, but we didn't know anything.
No, that's ridiculous. We all were starving and we all needed to just try to find food and try to work and try to stay alive.
Yeah, all we had to do was to try and survive one more day.
Great Grandma Minnie, what are these documents?
Aidan, Lexi, all the Kindle out there. Let me show you. This is the Lodge Housing Buck. It lists my name and that I was a student. This is the Lodge Housing Ledger. So let me tell you from the top, that's my father, Jacob, then my mom, Perla, then my brother, Common, then my sister, Luba, then me highlighted in light pink, it says Mindela, which was my nickname, and then my sister, Esther, my sister, Chava, and then my baby brother, Itzik. My father, Jacob, this was his work card. He was a dairy specialist in the Lodz ghetto.
And notice, Kinderlach, it says here at the bottom, Litzmannstadt Ghetto. That's the same place, only that's how the Nazis called it. We never called it by its Nazi name. Oh, and you also found our book ledger. So this is my mother, Bina. This is me, Luba, and my sister, Regina. And you know, when they came to look for us, they knew which apartment buildings to go to because of these ledgers.
Yes.
They knew where everybody was.
Wait, Grandma, was this what you were talking about? I looked it up on the Holocaust Museum site. It says it's the straw shoe factory.
Yes, Lexila, Aidan, Kindla, look, this is the straw shoe factory. So if you look on the lower right-hand side of the picture, that was the raw straw. It was very thick. You know, sometimes I would wake up extra early to get to the factory and try to pick the straw that was a little bit softer on my fingertips, but it was really rough. And then you can see the worker sitting there, weaving and braiding together this straw. And then on the left, you can see the finished product. Those were the boot coverings that went over the SS soldiers' boots to keep their feet warm and dry during the cold winter months. It was a lot of work.
And time just went on. We were there for such a long time. But then again, there were changes. There were
Yes.
more.
By July 1944, many ghettos were being sent to Auschwitz.
Luba, I see that the document has Sholem and Leo's Auschwitz numbers. Sholem B3138 and Leo B3137. It looks like they're Auschwitz ledger.
It is, Aidan Led, is. You know, in Auschwitz, people didn't just lose their belongings and their things and people and family. They also lost their name. When people came to Auschwitz, immediately everything was taken away from them. And if they were chosen for life, they would be tattooed with a number. They would become a Häftling, a prisoner, and they would call people by their prisoner number, not by their name. But my Schulim, my husband Schulim, he never answered when he was called. You know, he was a strong man. You know, he was a boxer before the war. And let me tell you, Kinder, Schulim came from Kilts, and in Kilts there was a ghetto, but there was also a labor camp afterwards. And Schulim and his brother Leo were taken to the labor camp to work. And one day, one of the Nazi officers came up to Schulim and said, "You're going to be boxing this Christmas Eve. You're going to have a match, entertainment for the Nazis."
Terrible.
Terrible. And Shulam said, "No, I haven't trained. I haven't eaten anything. I'm constantly starving. I can't go into the ring." And then the Nazi officer said, "No, no, you will have whatever you need, and you are going to be boxing against this capo."
No, oh no. Then he could get in trouble for hitting the capo, the guard.
Exactly. But also this capo, he was a mean, mean man. He would beat up children just for the sport of it until they died. Shulam didn't really want to do this, but he didn't have a choice. And came Christmas Eve, he went into the ring and he won the match. The following day, very worried, he sees this capo coming up to him. Capo puts out his hand, says to him, "So now that you've won the match, what do you want? Do you want better food? Do you want a better living condition?" Shulam said, "No, the only thing I want is for you to stop killing the children." And as far as we know, he stopped killing the children.
It's unbelievable. I mean, Shulam had such a heart of gold. The fact that he thought of the Kindla, the children, and not himself, he could have asked for more food or more clothes, but he didn't.
You know, talking of a heart of gold, when Shulam and Leo arrived in Auschwitz, Schulim had a $20 gold coin. Now, he was very adamant that that coin will come into Auschwitz with him. So they took everything away from them and tattooed. And Schulim put the coin into his mouth, first in his cheek and then under the tongue, because they checked everywhere.
Everywhere. Well, they took everything from you and they checked everywhere.
Everywhere. But he manages to take the coin in with him. And then he was thinking for a while what to do with this coin, what to trade it for, because there was a black market in Auschwitz.
Oh,
Because of
there is a black
Canada.
market everywhere.
Yeah. Minia, do you remember Canada in Auschwitz?
Yes, that's where all the belongings were taken. So everyone who brought their suitcases and everything was sent to Canada.
Right. So he wanted to trade his coin for something, only he couldn't decide yet what it was. And then one day, a capo, a non-Jewish capo, came up to him and says to him, Jew, where's your gold coin? Shulam said, I don't have a gold coin. Oh, the capo wasn't having any of this, pulled Shulam into the barrack, stripped him naked, and started beating him left, right, and center, slugging him here, slugging him there, a patch here, a patch there. He was black and blue. And all this time, he's screaming at him, where's your coin? Where's your gold coin? Give me your gold. Give me your coin. Shulam kept saying, I don't have one. I don't have it. I don't have it. At the end, the capo got fed up with the whole thing, threw Shulam out. Shulam lands on a pile of bodies. All he wanted to
He
do.
could have killed him, but he didn't kill him.
Yeah, and all Shulam wanted to do is to close his eyes and. But thank God Leo was there with him, because Leo came out, gave him some water, gave him a shtickle bread, a small piece of bread, something, kept him alive through the night. But the capo, he didn't have enough. And he told. And then one of the Nazi officers heard about this. Two guards came, picked Shulam up, dragged him to the officer's office. And in the middle of the office, there was a wooden stool. And both guards were holding Shulam, who's kneeling on this stool. The Nazi officer behind him whips him on the back once. Jew, where's your gold coin? Shulam said, I don't have a gold coin. Again, whips him even stronger. Jew, where's your gold coin? Shulam said, I don't have a gold coin. And before the third whipping, Shulam suddenly had this koyach, this strength, shoved the two men who were holding him down. Each one landed on another wall. He said, I don't have a gold coin. Well, the Nazi officer, he had enough of this. And he just said, throw this filthy Jew out. So they did. And it seemed for a while like things went back to normal. And Shulam went back to work and it was Auschwitz. And then one day this capo, the same capo, sees him and he says to him, so now tell me, really tell me, what did you do with your gold coin? Shulam said to him, you think I would go through all this beating if I had the gold coin? I don't have the gold coin. Capo looked at him and said, you Jews, you think you're so strong. And he walked away. A while after that, Shulam and Leo already knew they were going to be leaving Auschwitz. So Shulam, in the middle of the night, comes out of his barrack, and in between his barrack and the other two, kneels down in the ground, digs up the earth, takes the gold coin. The gold coin went with Shulam afterwards everywhere, all the time, all through the war.
That's unbelievable.
Luba, is this the picture of Shulam's gold coin?
Lexala, I'm so happy you found this photo. Yes, this is the coin. You see, it says on it $20, United States of America. Rick, he has the coin now. And one day he'll give the coin to his son, who will give the coin, and so on and so on. I hope it will stay in our family for generations to come.
It's really unbelievable. But you know what? It wasn't just Shulam who brought something with him to Auschwitz. Also, Grandpa Muni did. Grandpa Muni was also from Celts. And when he arrived in Auschwitz, also around the same time that Shulam arrived, July of 1944, When he arrived in Auschwitz, he had a diamond that was sewn to the inside of his pocket. So when he arrived and they're taking away all of his clothes, he was able to save the diamond and put it in his belt buckle and save it there. And also, upon his arrival, they tattooed his arm B3379. His cousin Simon was tattooed B3380 right behind him, and his brother Aaron was also with him. Muni held on to this diamond. Every morning, kids, they had something that was called a Pell, roll call. At 4 a.m., you had to stand at attention. Achtung! Stand at attention! And for hours, you had to stand at attention while they counted you. It was unreal. Didn't matter the weather, pouring rain, snow, cold. You had to stand outside. So Grandpa Muni's standing outside. It's pouring rain. And the capo, the guard, is coming around to take the belts. So he slowly moves his hand to get the diamond out. But the diamond slips from his fingertips and falls to the mud below. He can't move, he can't look, because then somebody will see him. And he doesn't even have shoes or socks on. So he's sinking deeper and deeper into the mud, where he's standing for hours. Finally, the roll call is over. He waits for everyone to leave. Then he bends down and looks through the mud, and he's able to save the diamond. Muni held on to that diamond for a long time, until one day, emaciated and starving, he went over to a capo, a guard, and he offered him the diamond for a piece of bread. The capo could have taken the diamond, punched him, walked away, not given him anything. He didn't have to give him anything, but he didn't. He gave him bread, and that helped him live.
That is so lucky, because that capo, he didn't know him anything. He didn't have to
No.
give him anything.
No, absolutely he didn't. And then by August of 1944, the Nazis were clearing out the Lodz ghetto. Yes. So this is my Auschwitz card and ledger. I arrived in Auschwitz, it was September 13th, 1944, but I wasn't intake to the following day, which is September 14th, 1944. And to the right, that's the ledger, and you can see highlighted in light pink my name and two of my sisters' names. You know, we were told when we were leaving the Lodz ghetto that we were going to work. We didn't know what that meant. So before I left, I braided my hair in long ringlets, the way my mother used to do it, and put a red ribbon at the bottom. I was wearing a blue and white polka dot dress. We were shoved inside the cattle cars, packed so tightly for days and nights, with nothing to eat or drink. The train finally stopped, and the doors opened. The SS were screaming. The dogs were barking. There was so much chaos, pushing and shoving right there on the platform, men to one side, women to another side. My father and my brother Itzik were taken away. I didn't know that was the last time I was going to see them. I was taken with my sisters, Esther, Chava, and Luba, along with the other women, where we were forced to take off our clothes and put on work clothes. Then they shaved our hair. I'm looking at my sisters and they're looking at me, and we don't even recognize each other. We had no hair. We held on to each other's hands so that we wouldn't lose each other. I looked up and I saw a red brick building with chimneys. So many chimneys. And there was smoke coming out of the chimneys and a smell. Luba, do you remember that smell?
Terrible smell, burnt chicken smell.
It was terrible.
Terrible.
I didn't know where I was, so I overheard a woman speaking in Yiddish. I went over to her and I asked her, "Where are we?" She said, "You're in hell."
But not everybody came to Auschwitz the same way.
No.
You know, because Regina worked for the phone factory, she and everybody else in that place, they were all going to be special detailed. they were going to be sent to the Sims factory. It's also Auschwitz, only not in the same place. Sorry. And all the people who were in the special detail were allowed to bring their family. So when they started clearing out the ghetto, my mother and myself went together with Regina to the special place within the ghetto that we were kept there until it was time for us to go. And you know, even Chaim Romkowski, the head of the Judenrat, the Jewish Council, this was the only time we ever saw him. He came to talk to us and he said to us, "Oh, you're very lucky. You're the lucky ones. You'll be saved because you're going somewhere special." Special. They put us on a train also, and we traveled for a few days in these cattle carts, and then we arrived at night at this very strange, bizarre place. When we came off, they separated the men and the women, and there were two men that were taking things off from the train. They were talking amongst themselves in Yiddish. So I went up to them and I said, "What is this? Where are we?" And they said, "This is Auschwitz, a death camp." I got so nervous and scared. I didn't know what to do. But then we didn't go through the same thing as you because we were special detail and we were supposed to go somewhere else. So they just took us as we were with our clothes and our hair and everything. And with older women and children, we went into these special barracks and we waited there and waited there. And everybody looked at us as if we came from outer space because who saw children in Auschwitz? Who knew?
And you had your hair.
And we
So
had our
you had your
hair.
clothes. So you looked privileged.
Different. Yeah.
We didn't have that. We looked completely terrible. You know, one time I was passing by a barrack and I saw myself in a reflection of the window and I saw that I had no hair. I looked like a monkey. It was terrible. Oh, but I have to tell you, the capo was so mean. She took a woman and she put her head in the furnace and she killed her. As she screamed, the capo turned to us and said, "If you don't behave, I'm going to do the same thing to you." We were scared. We knew where we were. We knew what Auschwitz was. We learned. We learned about the gas chambers. We learned about the crematorium. We survived selections. We were there. You know, there was a selection, and we knew what this meant. So one time I took my sisters and I hid them behind a barrack, and I took some wood and I put it over us. But the capo saw us. She took us out from behind the barrack and threw us into line. I didn't know what was going to happen. Were we going to get punished for trying to hide? We survived that selection. We were sent back to the barrack, and we knew what happened to the line that didn't come back to the barrack. We were starving. Everyone was so hungry. We were given a bowl for soup, and this soup was that same watery cabbage soup that you could taste the dirt from the cabbage in your teeth. Sometimes that was all we had all day, maybe some bread, but it wasn't enough. So one day I went back in line just to lick the rim of the container that the soup was in, just to have something a little bit more. But the guard recognized me, took the butt of the rifle, and knocked it into my mouth. My teeth fell out. There was blood in my mouth. My head was throbbing. No one could help me. I couldn't help myself. I just had to take it.
You know, there was this one capo. She was a beautiful woman, but a very ugly person, Irma Gers. One day she came into our barrack and she said, "Simmons, no Simmons, don't care. Everybody in the morning is going to go to the gas chambers." We also already knew what the gas chambers were. And we all said, well, we're going to die tomorrow morning. Might as well eat everything that we have. So we ate it all. We ate everything. And you know, I always was looking for something to do. What to do? I was bored. I didn't want to sit in the barrack all day. And there was this girl who worked in the kitchen, Polish girl. She couldn't read all right. And she asked me to read the letters from her boyfriend from the outside. So that was my work, my job. And she would give me in return a shtickle bread, a potato, whatever she had that she could give. And I would take it back to the barrack and share it with Regina and with my mother. And also we got the same rations as everybody else. We had one piece of bread and that disgusting water, the brown water, they called it coffee. Coffee. So we ate everything when Irma Gers told us that we were all going to die. We were all going to go to the gas chambers. And then the next day, we didn't go anywhere. We just stayed in the barracks, but we had no more food, no more extra food. Terrible. But still, because we looked so different, we were privileged. And people wanted to give us things. And there was this one girl, she used to make from, what do you call them? Blankets. Yes, blankets.
Right, blankets.
She used to make from blankets jackets. And she asked me one day if I wanted one. I said, yes, I wanted one.
I would have liked a jacket. I didn't have a jacket.
Yes. So I wanted one, but I also wanted one for my mother and for Regina. And I said that to her, and she gave me another jacket. And we all had to stand in Appel. So we were waiting to go, but in the meantime, it was still in Auschwitz. So we stood in Appel 4 a.m, raining, snowing, it didn't matter. It was freezing cold. They would make us stand for hours.
I know.
These Nazis, they couldn't count.
I
They
know.
would count again and again and again. It was
For hours.
for hours, for hours. So I wanted a jacket also for Regina and for my mother. But in Auschwitz, everything was dirty. Everything was terrible. And once a week, they used to send us to disinfect. And we had to go to the showers, take off the schmattes, the rags that we were wearing, go through the shower, and then on the other end, we got other schmattes. Same terrible thing. They did this because of the lice. Minia, do you remember the lice?
The lice was terrible. There was so much lice. My whole body had lice. Literally, I could take clumps of it. I could sell it to a country. I had so much lice.
Kinder, this isn't lice like This is special lice. This is KZ lice. This is the camp lice. It
Right.
used to eat you alive. It was disgusting.
Oh, it was eating us alive.
Eating us alive. But I did not want to give away my jacket. So I said, I'm not going to go to the showers. I'm not going to go and disinfect. I waited for my mother and Regina to go with everybody else. And then I went and I hid behind the barrack. I was looking what to do, was looking for something. What shall I do? And then this capo, this Czech woman, comes up to me and she says, what are you doing? I said to her, oh, I'm waiting for my brother. My brother works in Canada. My brothers were dead already. She said, are you lying? I said, no. She said, if you're lying, I'll find out and I'll kill you. And I said, okay. And she walked away. And as she's walking away, these 4 men on the other side of the barbed wire fence, they're walking and they're schlepping the, what did we call it?
The blanket.
The blanket. They're schlepping the blanket. And in the blanket, they had shoes. And they stopped in front of me. And one of them says, you want a pair of shoes? I said, of course I want a pair of shoes. Who doesn't want shoes in Auschwitz?
I wish I had a pair of shoes. I had the wooden clogs. They were terrible. They would cut into my feet and make my feet bleed.
Exactly, yes. So I said, yes, I want a pair of shoes. So he took out a pair. I said, maybe something bigger. Then he took out these beautiful leather boots and they had hooks and laces. He tried to throw them over the thing, but I didn't want to touch the barbed wire because the fences, they had electricity in it.
Yes.
I didn't touch that. So he managed to shove the boots underneath and I took them. And the following day I saw the capo and I said, see what my brother gave me? But it was terrible there. And then at some point, there was no going to the Siemens factory because the Allies, they were already bombing the train tracks and we couldn't go. So that's when they decided we were going to go into the regular Auschwitz where everybody else was,
Yes.
not just in this barrack sitting and waiting.
Yeah. So the capo called us for another selection. I knew what that meant. And as I walked by red brick, I took my fingertips and I rubbed it against the red brick. And I took that little bit of red dust that was on my fingertips and I rubbed it on my cheeks like rouge so that I could look healthy. We walked up, we were all naked, we have no clothes. And it was Dr. Mengele, the angel of death. He would decide who lives and who dies. And with his arm and his wrist and his whip, he would send one person to the right, one person to the left. You never knew which line was the good line. I was sent to one line, and my three sisters, Esther, Chava, and Luba, were sent to another line. And then I saw you.
It was terrible. They made us come in naked. They took everything away again. And then they put my mother in a line and I was in another line and I didn't want to be in the other line. I wanted to be with my mother. So I rushed over to the other side. And one of the guards there, he caught me, he saw me, and he dragged me out, gave me such a patch. He hit my face. It was so painful. He said, "What are you doing?" I said, "No, I want to be with my mommy." And he threw me into the other line. But I went hysterical. I was screaming and shouting and running around and crying, and I didn't know what to do with myself. And then this other guard, he came and he caught me and he said, "What are you doing? Why are you screaming? Why are you crying?" And I said, "My mommy, I want to be with my mommy." No, smacked me again, such a patch in my face, and then he threw me into the other line. And then I saw Regina and I saw you, and we didn't know which line was the
No,
line for
we
life
didn't
and
know
walking.
until then our line was sent back to the barrack and the other line wasn't. And that's when we knew.
I know. I said to Regina, Regina said, "Where's our mother?" I said, "We don't have a mother anymore."
And I didn't have my three sisters. And so my aunt and my three sisters, we never saw again.
And we didn't stay very long in Auschwitz after
Yeah,
that.
but remember that woman who was really depressed?
Oh, the Greek, the one, she
Yes.
wouldn't stop every day talking, hack me a
Right.
China.
I mean, the three of us had each other, so we were lucky. We weren't alone. But this one woman, she was very depressed. She was alone. She didn't have anybody. And she kept saying, "Tonight, let's go on the electric barbed wire fence." She wanted to kill herself and she wanted us to do it with her.
Yeah, she wouldn't stop all the time. Let's go to the wires. Let's go to the wires. She was so depressed. But we didn't want to go to
No,
the.
I said to her, no, I said, if you want to kill yourself, go right ahead. If they're going to kill me or we're going to die, there's nothing we can do about that. But I want to live. I want to see how this war's going to end. I had hope that somehow tomorrow would be a better day. Where there's life, there's hope. Tomorrow, somehow tomorrow could possibly be better.
Always tomorrow. You always said to us tomorrow, and then we waited, and tomorrow came, and tomorrow, and the night, Kinder, you gotta hear the story. The night that we had to leave Auschwitz, they took us from our barracks, but we couldn't go on to the train yet because there was another train coming from somewhere else.
Right. So they have us right outside of Auschwitz, sleeping on the ground by the railroad tracks, but we couldn't sleep. We were so hungry. There was a train that came in from Czechoslovakia, and there were four sisters, each with 2 kilos of bread.
Do
That's
you know how much
eight,
food that is?
that's 8 kilos of bread. We didn't have that much food. So that night, everyone goes to sleep, but not me. I wait for the four sisters, each with their 2 kilos of bread. They fall asleep. I then take one of the breads and I say to Luba and Regina, "Come, meet me out back in the latrine." And there we ate the bread. Made sure we didn't have any crumbs. We go back out and we went to sleep. In the morning, the sisters wake up. And one of the sisters says to me, the right person, me, "Did you see what happened to my bread?" I said, "I don't know what happened, but you're four sisters. You have three breads. Share. You'll be okay." We all needed to do whatever we needed to survive, and this is what we needed to do.
Yes. And then we went to, where did we go, Minia? Did we first go to Kurzbach?
Yes, Kurzbach.
I remember Kurzbach in the forest.
It was terrible. Can I tell you, Lexila, Aidan, all the Kindle, listen. It was wintertime, and they made us go to the forest and cut down these Christmas trees, these very, very large trees. And Luba and Regina had this big saw, and they would saw it back and forth, back and forth. So Luba and Regina each have one end of the Christmas tree. One person has the front, the other person has the back. So I take my shoulder and I go in the middle, and I'm going to help schlep the tree back to the camp. Well, the guard sees me, and he doesn't like that I'm helping them. So I get punished. I now have to saw down a tree all by myself. What? I was skin and bones. I was emaciated. I was starving. And I didn't have a partner to saw down the tree and this large tree to do myself. But somehow I did it. I found the koyach, the strength, and I did it. And then I had to carry it by myself back to the camp. I did it.
You did do it. Do you remember? Do you remember that we had to sing?
Wenn der Tag erwacht und die Sonne lacht, die Kolonne zieht dem Tageslicht hinein in den gräuenden Morgen und die Nacht ist schwarz und der Himmel ist rot. Und wir tragen im Brotsack ein kleines Stückchen Brot und in Herzen die Sorgen. Doch Kurzbach, ich kann dich nicht vergessen, denn du mein Schicksal bist. Wer dich verlässt, der kann es erst ermessen, wie wundervoll die Freiheit ist. Doch Kurzbach, wir jammern nicht und klagen.
We didn't stay very long in Kurzbach.
No. And
Yeah.
then we were transported to Grossrosen.
I and Grossrosen, I'll tell you, Kinder, we had to go in. We came off the train or whatever it was that took us. We came in. Again, we had to strip naked.
Naked, always naked.
And there were these men, these Nazis, they were standing in a circle, and we were to run through that circle naked. For what? Who knows? And as I'm about to run, and I'm hiding myself, this man comes up to me and says to me, "Hey, you want some bread, some boit?" And I said, "No, I couldn't even answer. I was trying to hide." So he takes a loaf of bread, sticks it underneath my armpit. This is how I ran through. I tell you, some of the things that we did for bread afterwards.
Yeah, because we volunteered to work in the kitchen because we were smart. And what they did is they lined us up and they would pass the bread down to bring it into the kitchen like a conveyor belt. But when the bread would pass, I would take a little piece, a little shtickle of bread, and I would hide it in my shirt. Everyone did this. Well, Regina did this, and she was caught by the capo. It was terrible. They had her running around outside naked, and the capo, the guard, was whipping her and whipping her. She had welts all over her body. She was bruised and swollen and red all over. It was terrible.
Terrible, terrible. And she was running around the latrine, and this one's running after her, and nobody could do anything. Anything.
We just put her in the snow to try to cool down all of the welts on her body.
She was never the same again afterward.
No. And then from there, we were transported again.
Yes. Listen to this, Kinder. This is late in the war. We didn't know it was late in the war.
No one told us anything. We didn't know what was going on.
Nobody told us anything. When we were in Auschwitz, we thought the whole world was in Auschwitz. And then we went to Kurzbach and we went to Grossrosen, and suddenly we see there's people also in other places. We didn't know what was happening in the world. So they put us on this coal train with these open carriages, open wagons.
Right, so it's open. We're standing in this open train.
Standing in the open air. And we didn't know where we were going. Afterwards, we discovered we were heading to Buchenwald, but things, and the Allies, they're bombing from the sky. Do you remember this? Do you remember the girl, Minia? Do you
Yes,
remember
there was a
that?
girl right next to us, and a bomb had fallen, and the shrapnel had cut off her hand. And
Yeah,
literally, her hand was gone, and she was bleeding out, and she was standing right
all
next to us.
over her blood. And do you remember this? They had this one of the guards. He was maybe a bit younger. I don't know. He was so scared. He hid behind Regina's skirt, and he kept pointing up to the sky. Look what your friends are doing. Look what your friends are doing. And at the end, the train came close to Buchenwald. We came out. We couldn't even stay there. Everything was bombed. So, so that's when it started, the march.
Yeah. By January 1945, we were marching. We were marching, kids, for days and nights. We had nothing to eat or drink. There was snow all around us, but we weren't allowed to eat it. The SS would kill us. And we would schlep Regina, Luba, and
Helping
I.
her,
We would
hand
carry
in
her
hand, on the back, whatever it took.
any way we needed to, because if you did not keep up, they shot you. People were dying. And I didn't even have any shoes or socks. So I just ripped the bottom of my dress and I took the thin cloth and I wrapped it around my bare feet. We marched for miles and miles.
Minya, do you remember that night with the guard, and he didn't know what to do? Kinder, the guards, they were marching with us, and this one guard, he went completely insane. Meshuggah, he went insane. He took out his gun, put it to his head, and he said, "I might as well just kill myself, and you can all run off." Of course, he didn't kill himself. We didn't run off, but he was, and never mind that. Kinder, you need to listen to Minya now. She has a story. You won't believe it. Minya, tell them the story.
Yeah, so one night we stop by this little farm and there's a barn. And the SS scream at us to get inside. Hours later, we still couldn't sleep, but it was warm inside and the smell of the pigs and the horses was nice. Do you remember the horse?
Do I remember the horse? The horse kicked me in the back. Till today, I can feel it.
I know. But it was warm, but I couldn't sleep. So I said to you and Regina, stay here. I'm going to look and see if I can find us something to eat. I left the barn, and nearby, there was a small house. I opened up the door, and there, the SS were sleeping, the rifles were up against the wall, and their rucksacks. I quickly stole a rucksack, ran back to the barn, said to Luba and Regina, come meet me in the corner. We opened it up, and inside, there was beer, liverwurst, and chocolate. We ate it all.
But I was so worried because if they would have found the rucksack with us, they would have killed us immediately. They would have known we stole it.
Right.
What
So
to
I
do
said,
with
don't
it?
worry about it. I'll bury it under the straw in the barn. They'll never find it. That night, we finally slept. In the
Yes.
morning, the SS come and they shout, Achtung! Stand at attention! And then the SS with his pistol shooting it up in the air, wanting to know, who took my knapsack? Who took the rucksack?
I was he shouting for hours. He was screaming, Geschreierei, you won't believe.
For hours he screamed at us,
And
but
we
we
stood
didn't say
there.
a word. We weren't dummies. We knew he'd shoot us and kill us. So we let him scream. He threatened to kill us all, but he didn't kill anybody. And then we continued the march. The other SS said, come on, let's go. We have to keep going. So we did.
I was looking up the death marches from 1944 to 1945. Are these all the routes y'all took?
Yes, Lexi, Aidan, Kindela. If you look in the lower right-hand corner, you can see that's where Auschwitz is. From there, we went up to Kurzbach, which isn't on the map, then to Grossrosen, then over to Buchenwald, then up to Bergen-Belsen. Grandpa Muni and Schulim, they were also in Auschwitz. We were in Auschwitz at the same time, and we didn't even know it at that point.
Well, we didn't know them at the time.
No, we didn't know them at the time. And We
And
didn't
also, we
go
were in the
after the war.
women's side, not in the men's side.
Right, exactly. And so they went from Auschwitz and they took different routes. And Grandpa Muni went to Flossenburg and then he went up to Dachau, where that's not even on the map, where they ended up. But we marched from Buchenwald into Bergen-Belsen.
We were all so sick.
So sick. We were sick with typhus. We had a fever. We had that lice. Oh, the lice all over us.
It's that lice.
We were naked. We were emaciated. We had nothing. And there were mountains, and I'm talking about thousands of dead bodies everywhere. The crematorium was broken.
You know, I wanted me and Regina to lie down on the floor somewhere in a barrack. We had to climb over the bodies to get to a small piece of ground that we could lay down on.
Yeah.
Terrible. It was terrible.
Nobody
Hell there.
should see what we've seen in our life. A day in Bergen-Belsen felt like a year. And laying on the ground, I could hear the ground and feel the ground rumbling. I didn't know what it was. And then I saw tanks coming over the barbed wire fences. And there were men parachuting in. This was April 15th, 1945. And a tank stopped nearby me, and a young man in military uniform got out, came over to me. He took off his jacket and he put it on me. I fell to the ground. The jacket was too heavy for me. It was skin and bones. I gave him my hand and he helped me up. And I started talking to him, but he didn't understand me and I didn't understand him. So I took his hand and I walked him over to the barrack to where Luba and Regina were. And I said, Luba, Regina, you have to come out. You have to see what's happening here.
And I said, Minya, can't you see we're dying here?
I said, come out now. Die later. We're being liberated.
And you know, she did. She came in, she dragged me out of the barrack and she said, look here, look here. I said, yes,
You
yes,
have
yes.
to see. You have to see what's
Couldn't see
happening here.
anything. I was so sick with the fever. I thought I was gonna die there. It was terrible. But liberation, that was the best.
Yes, but it was bittersweet. So the British had liberated us, and I was sent to a DP camp in Munich, Germany. But Luba and Regina, they were sent to a sanatorium.
Yes. You know, Regina, she was never the same. She was so sick and I had water in my lungs. And, you know, they took care of me there. And also, you know, the British, when they came to liberate us, they saw everybody was starving and they kept giving food and more food, but it wasn't good for us. Yeah, I didn't take anything because I saw how other people were dying from getting this food, so I didn't take. And yeah, and then you went off to a DP camp.
Right. And in the DP camp, that's where I met Muni, who was liberated from Dachau by the Americans. And then I wrote you a letter.
Yes. So Minia told us she was gonna get married. So we came to the DP camp where Minia was. And I tell you, it's a good thing we did because then I met also Muni's friend Schulim.
That's right.
But you know, when I came, Minia didn't have a wedding dress yet. So I went knocking on every single door to try and find the most beautiful and perfect dress.
Right, which she did. So Luba found me the wedding dress that I wore, that I then passed down to her that she wore just a couple months later when she married Schulim.
Like in the pictures, Kinder, the ones you looked at the
Right,
beginning.
exactly. Those pictures that we showed at the beginning of us telling you this story. And the American general who threw us the wedding. I'll never forget, we invited everyone in the camp. I'm standing under the chuppah and I'm looking in Muni's eyes. And he's looking in mine. Ani vidodi lidodi li. I am my beloved and my beloved is mine. And then, I mean, that was only kids, April 6, 1946, a year after the war. To think a year later that we were getting married, that it was incredible to think. And then a year later, February 20th, 1947, I was in the hospital and I gave birth to my first child, a daughter that I named after my mom, Perla. What I lost, I found in my daughter. This was my everything, my husband and my daughter.
So Shulam and I, we also met, and then we also got married after a while. And not long after that, we also had our first boy, baby Rick. And we stayed in America for a while, in Germany for quite a while, but
I
you
wanted
didn't.
you to come to America, but you couldn't.
You couldn't. Things didn't work out.
No, no. But I will tell you, Lexi, Aidan, Kindela, listen to this story. After the war, Grandpa Muni went to a local bar. When he walked in, the bartender said, Judah, Jew, for you, no beer. He couldn't believe it. After everything that he had been through, Muni was so upset. He lifted up a bar stool, threw it over the bar, and shattered the glass mirror behind the bar. The bartender called the military police. The MPs arrived, and he explained what happened. And not only did they take the bar stools, lift them up, throw them over the bar, and shatter the glass mirror behind the bar, they said, trash the place. Then they drove him home. Muni and I decided it was time to leave Europe. We packed up our belongings, which included a beautiful silver candelabra, and we embarked on our journey to cross the Atlantic to start our new lives in New York City. Our daughter was 2 years old, and it was June 1949.
Minnie and Luba, what are these documents?
Oh, Aidan, Lexi, Kindela. This is my Bergen-Belsen register and card. And on the right, you can see my name is highlighted in that light pink. These are the tracing cards. So my card is on the left, and Muni's card, Grandpa Muni, is on the right. So on my card, you can see the places and the dates of where I was. First, I was in the Lodz ghetto. Then I was in Auschwitz, then Kurzbach, then Grossrosen, then Buchenwald, then Bergen-Belsen, then the DP Camp New Freimann in Munich, Germany, which was a seedling, a settlement. Grandpa Muni, he was in the Celts ghetto and the Celts labor camp, and then Auschwitz, where his arm was tattooed with the number B3379, then Flossenbürg, Orenburg, and then Dachau, and then finally the DP Camp New Freimann, where we met. This is the displaced person camp card for myself, Grandpa Muni, and my daughter, Perla, who is your grandmother, who you call Gigi.
And this is my Bergen-Belsen card. Most of the camps after they were liberated, they became DP camps, displaced people's camps. So this was my card from the DP Bergen-Belsen. And these are the tracing cards for me and for Shulam. Every DP camp had tracing cards. These basically gave all the information about the person, where you were born, which camps you were in, which ghettos you were in, what date you were born, and so on. And the reason they had these cards is so that when people were looking for each other, and everybody after the war was looking for friends and for family and for relatives, you could contact the office in the DP camp, and they could look through and trace your card, hence tracing cards. And this is Regina's tracing card, and you can see for her at the end, it says DP Sanatorium. So even though she was in a sanatorium, she was convalescing, it was still a displaced person, because everybody in that place were all like her, survivors.
So this is the ship manifest of the three of us going to New York, and also the visa immigration application for our daughter, Perla. This is our immigration and naturalization paperwork and documents to come to the US. When we arrived in New York, the Hebrew Immigration Aid Society representative, met us at the docks. We were taken to an apartment on 109th Street and Broadway. Muni was given a job as a butcher, not a kosher butcher, but a butcher job. And I was given a stroller for my daughter. You know, I didn't know anybody. I was lonely. I didn't know the language. So I took my daughter for a stroll in Riverside Park, and I overheard a group of women speaking in Yiddish. I went over to them and I introduced myself, and that was the beginning of me making new friends in my new city. I'd always remembered what my mother had said, that after the war, we would go back to keeping kosher. So I walked inside a kosher butcher shop, and I started to talk to the man behind the counter. His name was Paul. And I explained that I was taking the money that my husband was making as a butcher to come here and buy kosher meat. He said to me, "Bring your husband by after work. I'd like to meet him." I did bring Muni by after work. And not only did Paul offer him a job, but he made him a partner in the business. The sign over the shop read Paul Muni Kosher Meats. Paul and Muni worked together for many, many years. Paul was kind and generous. He was like a father to us. Muni and I went on to have 2 more children, both sons. And you, Luba?
We we stayed in Germany for nearly 8 years, and we wanted to go to America. It didn't work out, so we ended up going to Argentina, to Buenos Aires. Regina, I think it was in 1948, she also moved to America. And then in America, she got married and she started her family. When we went to Buenos Aires, we had a daughter, another child. And you know, we made a life for ourselves there. We had a jewelry shop, and we met people, survivors like us, and we made some friends. You know, one day I went with a friend to a cafe, and there in the cafe, like nothing, Mengele. Mengele was sitting in that cafe. I froze. I didn't know what to do.
No,
Friend said,
scary.
"Shh, let's go out." And we walked out. Because, you know, if we would have said something, we would have been in trouble. But, you know, life was okay in Argentina. And Regina, when my Rick was a teenager, Regina kept saying to send Rick to America, that he would have better education there, and it would be better for him. And at the end, we agreed, and Rick went to live with Regina in America. And then when our daughter got older, she also went to America. And then my poor Regina, my sister, she died so, so young. And then right after she died, that was it. I decided I wanted also to be in America, and I moved. And then Schulim, he closed off the business and did what he had to do, and then he joined me. And ever since, that's it. We've been here.
Right.
We've been in America together.
I was so happy when you finally came to America. And what happened with us is that Paul passed away and we ended up closing the butcher shop. But then Muni and I, we owned and operated a candy store in the Bronx. And we did that for many years. And then many years after that, we went into business with our grown daughter. And we owned and operated a handbag store in New City, New York, in Rockland County. You know, we were in business for over 30 years. I loved the store. I loved working with my daughter. And I really always truly did believe that where there's life, there's hope. And being together meant so much to me. And being with you and with Shulam meant so much. You know, I will never forget all the holidays that we've spent together and the trips that we've taken. I will never forget this special trip that we took, a Cantor's Mission trip, where we went with our children and we walked in Auschwitz, and the morning prayer was going on, and the rabbi was reading from the Torah. And when he found out that Holocaust survivors with their grown children were here, he did something that wasn't normally done. He opened up the Torah scroll and he wrapped us in the Torah scroll. And then the men who were wearing the taluses, the prayer shawls, they took them off and they put them over our heads as if we were being protected by the hands of God. And the cantor was singing his special songs. To be back in Auschwitz, in a place where we were once imprisoned, where we were starving, where we didn't even know if we would survive that day, for us to have the strength to go back, it was so meaningful to be there with you, my cousin Luba, and our grown children.
Yes, for me as well.
Okay, have dessert.
Very good.
Now we can eat after we tell all these terrible stories.
Yeah.
No food, everybody's
So much-
hungry,
so much
and
food.
now we can eat.
And I'm watching
Did you have
nothing.
chocolates like this?
Not yet.
Yeah.
Oh yes, we got everything.
You got everything.
Don't
right?
ask.
Everyone, let's all take a very, very deep breath. And before we continue with our program, our storytelling section is now ended with the voices of Minia and Luba and Rick in the background. So before we continue, I'm going to take one short moment to say thank you. Thank you, first of all, to the Kinder, to Lexi and Aidan for being with us, for helping us usher through this program. Jessica, thank you for sharing your family story, first with me, but then with everybody else. Thank you for wanting this program to happen and to help us have this program. It's been an absolute honor to be with everybody and to tell together with you. And I really feel like this is now also part of my family.
Absolutely. Thank you. So let me take you all back to how this all began. In January, Lynn and I were working together on a Teach the Shoah program called Moment of Witness, a Holocaust remembrance program that featured stories from my own family's experiences. We shared the stories of Minia, Muni, Luba, Schulim, and Regina. Afterward, I remember saying to Lynn, I wish I could tell more stories. There's so many to share. She brought the idea to the head of Teach the Shoah, and with her support, we were given the green light for today's special presentation. Part of the inspiration came from a remarkable video recorded by Rick, Luba's son. In it, my grandmother Minya and her cousin Luba and Luba's husband Schulim are sitting around a kitchen table recounting their wartime experiences. Watching them brought these powerful stories to life, and that's where the idea for today's program truly took shape. Thank you. Thank you all for joining us for this special presentation. It was a true honor for me to portray my beloved grandparents, Minya and Muni. Lynn beautifully brought to life Minya's cousin Luba and her husband Shulam and Luba's sister Regina. A heartfelt thank you to Lynn for your incredible dedication, support, and hard work throughout this meaningful project. I am deeply grateful for our friendship and the special bond that we share. Your contribution to this program means so much to me, my family, and our friends. It's something I will always cherish. Thank you as well to Lexi and Aidan, my 4Gs, for being part of this memorable and deeply meaningful experience. It means so much to me.
Thank you, Jessica. So, my dear friends, we would like to share with you a few more photos and short clips, kind of to show a bit more Minya and Luba. And after that, we will open for a Q&A. So whoever can stay also for the Q&A part, we will appreciate that. So without further ado, let's have a little scroll down some photos. So Jessica, can you do what we're seeing here?
Yeah, so all these pictures are pictures that were taken in the DP camp, the displaced persons camp after the war. What I particularly love is the picture in the middle is a picture of my grandfather with my mom at 2 years old. And written on the picture is the name of the camp, New Fryman. The picture on the right is a picture of my grandmother holding my mom with my grandfather and cousin Luba next to her.
And these are photos of Luba with Rick, baby Rick, and Schulim and his brother Leo here in the middle. And here we have Regina and Luba. And the top photo here is of Luba and Rick, who is already a bigger boy, already in Argentina.
Okay, so the pictures on the top were pictures taken in the displaced person camp in Munich, Germany. The picture on the lower left-hand side, I had to put this in. You guys have to see this. This is their Jewish New Year card. And on the back, wait, first of all, the front of the card is my grandmother, my grandfather, Minia and Muni, with my mom, who's a 1.5 years old at that time. And on the back, in Yiddish, it says, "From ours to yours, New Year wishes, Osherovitz," their last name. This was sent out in the DP camp in Munich, Germany in 1948. So let's just think about this. 1945, they're liberated. 1946, they're married. 1947, they have my mom. And by 1948, they're sending out Jewish New Year cards. It blew my mind to see this because they had just survived a war where for 6 years they were persecuted and starved and beaten and killed for being Jewish. And now they were going back to Jewish traditions.
So the historian in me has to butt in and raise the historian hat to say that the tradition of sending a Shana Tova, a New Year card with a photo and illustration, was a very common practice in Poland and in general within the Ashkenazi communities. The fact that in 1948, and we actually start to see this in archives already from 1946, that people started to go back to doing the same tradition that they did pre-war. They're kind of trying to go back to life. It also takes us back to this small part that Jessica tells us as Minia of going back to eating kosher meat, right? This process of returning to life is in greeting cards and eating kosher, in getting married and having kids, and so on.
So these pictures are all post-war. So the top in New York. So the picture on the top middle is a picture of my grandparents in front of their apartment in New York City. The picture on the right is a picture of my brother at about 1 year old on a meat hook in the butcher shop. And there's my grandfather and my mom off to the side. And I just always love that picture and it always gets a laugh. So I always like to put it in. And the picture on the bottom is a picture of my grandparents in the candy store that they owned and operated in the Bronx. So my grandmother thought it was very important for her to share her stories. She spoke at middle schools, high schools, and colleges. And many times we had 4 generations with us, either one of my kids, Lexi or Aidan. And for us to be together was extremely meaningful. And I knew that eventually the torch would be passed to me. And now I continue to share their stories. I had the opportunity to go back to Auschwitz and Birkenau with my mom and my daughter on a trip called March of the Living. It was a really meaningful trip, and to go back to a place where my grandparents were once imprisoned, where family members died, meant so much to me, and it's an experience I will never forget. This is this Cantor's mission trip that Grandma Minnie, Luba, and their grown kids, my mom and Rick and Rick's wife, Anita, went on. And this is the Torah scroll that was wrapped around them and the taluses that were put over their heads during this very special ceremony.
And this photo here on the side of Minya and Luba cracking up laughing, this is one of the reasons why I am so obsessed with these two cousins. The humor that they use also in their recorded kitchen talk is why we're doing this, why
Yes.
I'm doing this. I was so engrossed in them and how they were with each other and they were constantly talking over each other, but also laughing about things.
Yes.
The humor it's not to belittle the experience. It's just, you gotta live, right? You
Right.
gotta do what you gotta do. So this photo, I think, really, this is like the little capsule of why we're here today.
Before I came to the gates, my two sons said, "Ma, don't go. You was once is enough." I said, "You know something? I'm going to show I can walk in, I can walk out." Auschwitz. This was my biggest satisfaction.
And this is a picture of myself with my daughter and my mom standing under those infamous gates at Auschwitz that read, "Arbeit macht frei," work sets you free, which we know is just another one of the Nazi lies. So these are pictures of my grandmother Minia and Luba. The picture on the left, that's Luba with the long pearls, and that's my grandmother next to her with the gold necklace. The picture on the right is a picture of my grandparents with my mom in a handbag store that they owned and operated in New City, New York. The picture in the middle is a picture sitting down, that's Regina and Luba, the sisters. And then standing, that's my grandmother Minya and my mom Pauline, which her name was changed from Perla to Pauline. And then the picture on the left you have seated is Grandma Minnie. We nicknamed her Minnie from Minya. And then Luba, and then Schulim, and then Grandpa Muni behind him. The picture on the right is a picture of my grandmother Minya. She's the one on the right with Luba next to her. And that was taken at my daughter's bat mitzvah. And they were having a great time dancing on the dance floor. And I wanted you to see how they enjoyed life and they enjoyed being together and they enjoyed having fun and they were always together and they're on the dance floor with all the giveaways from the DJ and it just was so much fun. And then the picture next to that is grandma sitting with Luba next to her, my mom Pauline behind them, and that's Shulam standing up and that's their daughter Ruthie. On the left-hand side, that's a picture of my daughter Lexi with Grandma Minnie at Lexi's bat mitzvah. And at Lexi's bat mitzvah, my grandmother also became a bat mitzvah because she didn't have the opportunity to become a bat mitzvah during the Lodz ghetto. And Lexi shared her talis with her, and the rabbi had called her up to the Torah, and special prayers and blessings were said, and it was a really special, meaningful moment. The picture in the middle is a picture of Grandma just taken a couple of years ago at my house at a Passover Seder. And during the Passover Seder, she has the mask on and the finger puppets, and she's just having a grand old time. And it just shows her personality and that she just loved to have a good time. And then the picture on the right is a picture of my son Aidan with her. And for his bar mitzvah, we custom made his talis on a loom, and we each had the opportunity to weave sections of the talis together.
That time never in camp, never came to the mind. Just to be liberated, to be free. You have to make yourself happy. To make myself happy like this. Always good. Snowy days, beautiful days. Everything is gorgeous. Never take something for wrong. Everything is good. I said, where's life? Is hope. Tomorrow be better. Always tomorrow. And tomorrow came.
In loving memory of Minia Osher, Muni Osher, Regina Ehrlich, Luba Kaminer, and Schulim Kaminer. So on behalf of Teach the Show, I'd like to thank you all again.